Cari amici sportivi, welcome to the local soccer show where we bring you local grassroots soccer where we every week we have a fantastic guest and every 2 weeks Presidente sends me a new appointment for me to check in my calendar and where we bother every single local soccer association out there on the island of Montreal to be on our show, guys. It's the local soccer show, guys, brought to you by Milan Weekly Podcast and also, guys, our sponsor, Evangelista Sport. Guys, 6821 Boulevard Saint Laurent. It's the mecca of soccer stuff, guys. You know, the World Cup is going on, Canada stuff, Morocco, Japan is in tonight. Today was a crazy day at the World Cup today. So go check them out, 6821 Boulevard Saint Laurent. Make it a day. Have a beautiful, nice afternoon out. And guys, thank you. Thank you to everybody at Evangelista Sport, not only for your soccer apparel, but your soccer gear, shoes, shin pads, cones, you name it, they have it. Thank you to the guys and girls at Evangelista Sport. We have a great guest this evening. A lot of people are excited. My phone has been ringing off the hook to get this guy on. All of the northern part of this beautiful city, which we call Laval, is been. I've had 450 numbers just constantly ringing my telephone. We have the sporting director from AS Laval, Mr. David Cerasuolo. Cerasuolo. He's gonna get mad at me because I didn't pronounce it right. But before that, Marcello, bring us into the show. David Cerasuolo,
Hey, S-
welcome to the local soccer show.
hey, Steve, how are you?
Very good, very good. David, you know the 450 numbers that have been hitting me up and wanting to know when am I gonna get David. There's also some inner beef there at AS Laval. You and Mr. Cornelli, you guys were fighting on who has to be on first. You were first, and I need to find a slot for Mr. Cornelli. So when he sees that, we're gonna get him on the local soccer show as well. Again, David, thank you. A big supporter of the show. I know that you watched religiously, then you took a little bit of a break, and then you started to watch again. You know what we do? We talk grassroots soccer, and I think it's important that we talk to people like you in your position who've been, grown up at a particular club, have gone through different experiences, and we try to educate either parents, other coaches, or other clubs to change a little bit of this philosophy that we have here in Quebec in terms of the mindset and try to make it more of a community instead of a empire building process. So, David, again, I thank you on behalf of MWP and Mr. Presidente in the back room at Master Control, giving us all our little clips and all our little hints. David, tell the people who have been living under a rock who David is.
Well, first of all, Steve, again, I just want to say hi. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for having me on, and I guess I'll mention that it was very gracious of Anthony to let me go first. So, who am I? My name's David. I'm the sporting director at AS Laval. I've been with the club prior to us having merged, right, and becoming AS Laval. So it's been in February. It's going to be 6 years that I'm with the club. Prior to that, I've had experiences working at Soccer Quebec and the National Training Center with provincial teams, working on coaching education projects, right, and courses. Uh, I had a stint with the Vancouver Whitecaps as a technical director in London, Ontario, and I also had the opportunity early on in my career to work as a technical director in another club in Laval that today no longer exists because it merged into the club on the west side of the island. But in a nutshell, that's me, and that's been the last 15 years or so of my coaching career.
Amazing, David. And a question that we would always ask, and guys, I'm gonna apologize in advance, guys. I really underneath the weather, and I'm gonna have this cup here. Guys, it's not usual. Usual would be filled with vodka, and I really enjoy a vodka soda. And I know it's the local soccer show, but I'm going to tell you the truth. It's water. And I'll be drinking this from time to time. I don't want to distract anybody, or else I'm going to cough the rest of the way. But David, just to touch on that too, a lot of people want to know, how did you get into soccer? How did you start your adventure in soccer? Starting from a young child, how did you get into it? Was it someone who introduced you?
Yeah, so if I go back to the beginning, I guess like a lot of young boys and girls, my parents registered me to play soccer at the local community club. And if I give you a quick anecdote, quick story, the first night I absolutely did not want to go play. My parents had to drag me kicking and screaming, and didn't go that well the first night. I ended up scoring on my own goal, right? So despite that, I loved it, fell in love with it right away, and I've been involved ever since. So then, I went up the ranks like a lot of players do, and I played in my local club. At the time was CS Monterey. Ended up playing for Les Conquérants de Laval, Lac Saint Louis Lakers at a certain point in my life, provincial teams along the way, and then I had a knee injury, an ACL tear at 17, 18 years old. So that, kind of put a wrinkle in things. Went through the rehab and started playing, missed all my CJEP soccer years, when you can enter, university scholarships and all that, but ended up playing university soccer at Concordia. And in the process, I went to John Molson School of Business, got a business degree, right, in management, and minor in accounting. And while I'm doing all that, well, I stayed involved I stayed involved in coaching. I got involved in coaching, right? Soccer camps and a session here and there, and a team, and I just, got the bug, and became totally immersed in it, totally invested. Started going through the licensing process because it was really picking up around that time. So the fortune I would say that I had was that I always was in a system that was growing, right? So I was fortunate in that regard. And then by the time I was out of university, I already got my first full-time technical director role, and I just ran with it. And then kind of, everything that I kind of mentioned before over the last 15 years or so.
Amazing. Just two questions. One, I need to ask you this because I know you're really involved in, in terms of, coaches courses and how to get your specific license to be a coach. David, I want to know why we need a PhD in astrophysicist and astrophysics to be able to register for a coaching course with Soccer Quebec.
Okay, I know why some people feel that way, right? Because there are a lot more prerequisites that you need to enter, for instance, a C license. I'll take the C license as an example because I'm actually going through the process now with quite a few candidates in my club. And yeah, it feels a little bit overwhelming sometimes because you got an interesting profile. Could be a player, he or she is 17, 18, getting involved in club programming, probably CDC. And it's like, let's go for a C license. And, these people, young adults, right? They're in CJEP, first year CJEP, maybe in university. And all of a sudden we hit them with this, okay, these are all the prerequisites you need. And there's this slew of courses, right? So it's like before you get into any of the soccer stuff, you feel like, man, I'm getting overwhelmed with all this other stuff. Like, is this for me? Is it too much? Can I handle it? So I know I understand the sentiment, right? So I think to answer your question, the reason it's being done is because people that do go through that process are better prepared, right? And they can kind of extract more out of the courses once they're there, right? So there's that part too. But another part that I like to speak about too is that it is for a lot of, it's a profession, right? Coaching is a profession. For a lot of people, whether they're full-time or not, it's a vocation, right? Like it's something that they really love doing. But there's a big investment of time to make sure that you're actually doing things well, as best as you can, right? At the level that our kids deserve. And I think that it's just about understanding both sides of it. So I get it from the candidate sometimes that feels a little overwhelmed. And I gave the example of a young coach, but it's been similar for adults.
How about like a 42-year-old handsome husky man with a beard and a hat on?
Well, I was gonna give a similar example, saying that these are people that have, full-time jobs, like they're leaders, they're managers, they're in businesses, and they too sometimes have similar struggles. So it's not foreign depending on the age, right? But I would tell you that it's so much better set up today because the support you get along the way from the course instructors, the mentors, maybe at regional level, and then your in-house, right? Your club leads, your coach education leads, depend the club you're in, um, support you, right? There's more people that are helping you, right, along the journey. Whereas before, and I'm not pointing the finger, just because the structure was
Yeah,
different, right? The
totally
investment
understand.
wasn't the same. You were more on your own, and if you weren't, again, lucky or fortunate to kind of know somebody or kind of be brought under somebody's wing, it could have been a little bit more easy to get lost along the way, But again, I just want to say, like, I think it's a good thing that coaches are going through this process, and it's a lot more extensive because on the other end,
Yeah.
it's a different product that's coming out.
And I bring this up just because I tried myself to do it on my own, in terms of like try to go to the right place, ask the right questions, sign up for the right modules. It's just, you know, like you said, doesn't it has nothing to do with the age. It could be a 17-year-old still in university, still in college, working. It could be someone my age, 40 something years old, full time job. I want to get this done, but it's discouraging me to get it done because there's so many moving parts that need to be done beforehand. What I'm thinking is, wouldn't Soccer Quebec be more more fruitful for them as well, and also two, more organized and compact, if they would do it club by club and just go to each of these clubs, let's say whatever level, whatever license they have, it could be provincial, it could be
Yeah.
national, and say, you know what, guys, we're gonna be in your region. We're gonna be here this date to this date, or find me X number of candidates, and we can do your course for you. For, let's say, again, I'm gonna give a club, like, let's say my club, like RDP. We need X number of coaches to be C licensed. Why do I need to send 5 people on their merry own way when I can gather up 10 and have Soccer Quebec say, "Hey, you 10 for RDP, I can give you a class. I can take you through this process, all in one shot, a
And
bulk registration."
yeah, I, I don't, and again, obviously, I mean, it's more of a question for the person kind of handling the
Yes, yes, yes,
logistics.
exactly.
So I'll try to answer from their perspective. I would imagine the difficult part is that there's a big number of clubs, and that it's probably really hard to kind of go club by club and, let's say, do 10 at a time, right? It's really um, labor intensive. Whereas, you kind of get everybody on one site on a few key weekends or dates, and it's a little bit more efficient. But I think the other benefit or advantage of bringing everybody in is that you get to interact with different people. You get to see different people. You get to speak to different people. And I think, to your point, and you mentioned it at the beginning, building that community, right? Not having that kind of silo effect. I think that's probably one of the best parts because everybody's kind of at the beginning of a course, kind of like, oh, I'd rather not have been here. I could have done something else this weekend. And then when you get into it, you're into Saturday afternoon on site. A lot of the times, people are really invested. A lot of them are having a blast, right?
Yeah,
Because at the end, like I said, it's soccer. They're passionate about it. They're interacting with other passionate people. The instructors give a lot of themselves to make sure that the content comes across right in an interesting way.
yeah,
And I think that's definitely the big benefit of kind of bringing everybody in, right? So apart the fact that probably logistically it's a bit tough going club by club, I think you would lose out on that aspect I just described.
yeah. Fair point. Fair point. I want to ask you this hot button question I've always had:
Okay,
the
go.
creation of AS Laval, the
Okay.
merger of these three Eastern Laval programs into one. How did it come about? And again, what was the process like? Because I imagine the process was not easy.
Look, the process, like any other I'll give you an example of any other business, right? Because businesses kind of go through mergers, right? It's not one that gets done overnight. There's a lot to consider. There's a lot of discussions that need to be had. There's a lot of face time that needs to be put in with people that you don't have um, a relationship with yet, or that type of relationship that you need to kind of embark on a project like that, right? So I think in our situation, it took a little bit of time. The city obviously wanted to go in that direction, and that was a big part of the reason why everybody kind of had to get on board. And then once you're in that boat, you understand, okay, well, this is what it's going to be. It's just a matter of time. It's just coming to the table and having discussions. And I know it kind of sounds like a bland answer, but it's just the more you sit and the more you talk and the more you try to understand what each side is kind of bringing to the table and feeling, and what are their concerns, or what are they worried about, or what are the positives we see coming out of this. Once we started going down that road, and especially kind of addressing the concerns, and now all of a sudden you're in that territory of, okay, well, now we're on the same page. These are all the good things that can happen. You're kind of moving a lot smoother because everybody's on the same page, right? So it took a few years, right? Because at first it was just an idea, really a rumor at first. Sometimes even us internally are like, oh, is it really headed in that direction?
Yeah.
But then once you see, okay, it's going to become a reality, you kind of go through those phases. And look, I mean, we just finished our first year of operation, and I'm so proud of what we've done, because having gone through that process and now looking back, if someone would have asked me, David, would you sign on the dotted line in year one to kind of have the operation roll out this way? I would have said yes. I didn't know we would have done that well. There's definitely stuff we're looking to do better, and we're at constant reflection, right? And we kind of set up dates during the year, as in year one, where we were kind of sitting down and auditing our processes. But honestly, from the volunteers to the part-time staff to the full-time staff to the board of directors, like the city, the region, the support, everybody kind of going along. I mean, I'm really proud of what we've done in year one, and I feel like it puts us in a great position to just keep working towards our goals. So not an easy process for anybody that's going through it. I've been there. I know sometimes what they're feeling, but it can be done.
Nice.
It can be done.
And just again, this is not to put you in a bad spot at all. Why did the city want to head this in this direction?
I think when the city looks at sport, okay, and then you look at soccer, which is probably your biggest sport in terms of participation numbers, for sure, even beyond hockey, they want to make sure that there's a consistent level of service that's being offered to all the citizens, and that it's not in one neck of the woods that you're really getting this top tier service, and then a few streets down or 3 exits down the 440, it's different, right? So I think for them, it's more from a perspective of uniformity in terms of service for the membership. I think that's kind of what drove their desire to have the clubs head in that direction.
Almost similar to Soccer Canada and how what they wanted to do with the licensing program and the CDC. Make sure that everybody who signs up for soccer gets the similar type of training across the board.
Yeah.
And we've had Mr. Grande on the Sandro Grande has been a guest on this show, and we know that he's from FC Laval.
Yeah.
How's your relationship? You have two massive clubs in a not so big area. How's the relationship between the two clubs? Is it like a friendly relationship? Is it more of a rivalry? What's the relationship between the two clubs?
Look, I think any two clubs in a city, there's going to be some sort of a rivalry, and I like the word rivalry because a rivalry is healthy.
Yes.
Right. When people start referring to them as enemies, then that's where you're over the line. It's toxic, and that's
we're local soccer, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly. That's not something we want to bring in, right? So we don't have a problem with that. But honestly, I mean, I've known Sandro for a long time, and our relation, we've worked on, in different areas. I mean, we worked at the National Training Center together. We were at provincial teams around the same time. So again, we've always crossed over because, again, we're colleagues. We're in the same neck of the woods. we're coaching in similar environments, and no, it's
Plus,
good. Then the reality is, this is what other people don't realize, is that, and I can mention this for any of my colleagues, right? Like you said, around the island, is that you have so much to do day in, day out in your club, in your organization, right? That you're so focused on your own processes. What are we doing? Right? A lot of the time you're not looking elsewhere. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because sometimes you have to look elsewhere to kind of see, like, what's going on? Are we doing the right thing? Are we headed in the right direction? Should we be doing something else?
true.
But once you've kind of got that view, then you got to put your head down with your people and work for your community, for your club, for your players, for your coaches, for your referees, your members, right? So that's where the majority of your time goes, right? Focusing on your club. I mean, that's, for me, that's always been a given.
And again, that's in your position, sporting director. And I say this, laughing, because I asked this question quite a bit of times because it interests me a lot. You know, I have the opportunity, not only with this show, and because I have a humongous big mouth and love to talk to people, that people actually take my call and actually want to talk to me, which is really cool, especially, trying to figure out this coaching stuff and figure out this soccer stuff, that I feel like I'm part of this community. I feel like, if now with you, David, I have a question. I'm not gonna be shy to pick up the phone and say, David, I know you went through this.
Yeah, of course.
You
As you
give
should.
me some pointers? I'm not stealing your secret recipe. I'm not stealing anything from you. I'm asking someone who's more educated in something that I need to do, if he can help me. The last I checked, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in local soccer, please share this with your club. That's not a crime. And I think that's actually the right thing to do. When you go to the mechanic, you're going to the mechanic because he's a mechanic.
Absolutely.
Uh, I'm really happy that we're talking about this. And I know that in 2 weeks' time, approximately, uh, I want to touch on this shortly, because AS Laval is a nationally recognized club. I know they have a national license, so the tiers are national, provincial, regional, and so on and so forth. In 2 weeks' time, Canada is going to announce, the next batch of clubs that will either will or will not upgrade from regional to provincial, provincial to national, stay the same, stay at provincial, stay at regional, stay at national. I don't know if they digress from one to the other, if that's even possible, but the different opportunities and whatever is going to happen for those specific clubs. You going through this and, touching the pinnacle of the licensing program right away, name one thing you liked about the club licensing and one thing you don't like about the club licensing.
Well, the easy one for me is, what I liked going through it is that it forced us, and when I say us, clubs, but I'll speak for our situation, right? It forced us to document everything from A to Z, really break it down. So it's not enough that it's just clear in my mind and I'm the sporting director. That's not enough. Tomorrow, something happens, right? There's another opportunity. I leave, or for whatever reason, I'm not there, or a key member in the organization is not there. The idea needs to be documented somewhere. The process needs to be documented somewhere. What are we trying to do? So I think getting the team, right, the staff involved in kind of outlining all that and creating the documentation that the licensing process required, difficult, right? A lot of investment of time, but a really good exercise. Like, it's beneficial. When you're out of the tunnel on the other end, you see the benefit. So that's the flip side of it, is what did I not like so much? There's a lot of effort to maintain it.
Yeah.
Right. So apart from, and again, when you're maintaining, I mean, we know that you have to maintain the on-field product. I mean, that's key. Right? What are we doing? We're trying to offer a good service, a good product to the members. But there's a lot behind the scenes that people don't see, don't know about, and don't understand the investment of time that it takes the most key individuals in the organization that are most likely in any club involved also in maintaining the on-field standard. So it just becomes really heavy at times. And again, once you get over a deadline, you're kind of like, okay, another one. Okay, we're back. But there's another deadline that'll creep up, and it's okay. It's part of a process, but sometimes it can become heavy, right? So I think it's both sides to that coin. You understand the benefit, but on the other side, there's definitely a burden
Yeah,
that
you're
goes
not
with
the
it.
first, you're not the first to say that. And that's something that worries me, especially for guys like you, and technical directors and guys that are supposed to be worrying about the on-field product. I'm worried that the maintaining, or this heavy process, is gonna put such a huge burden on you guys, because nothing that works perfectly. There will be issues, and the only thing you need is, or don't want to happen, is a snowball of effects. And you know are do you think Soccer Canada, Soccer Quebec, are we emphasizing too much on these licensing programs, and maybe not enough on what we're trying to do on the development side?
Look, it's definitely a fair question, and I'm sure a lot of people have it. And you know what? I've had it to some extent. I think that this is the way I see it. We're we're kind of new to this, and especially this type of a process. We're very new to it, right? So you kind of need to make sure that the foundations are well set. And I think that looking on the medium and long term of a club, which is this organization that's going to exist in the community for decades and hopefully centuries to come, because that's what the case around the world,
Yep.
right? You need to have strong foundations. This burdensome process, as much as it's a pain for everybody sometimes, I think is part of establishing that foundation. And you can't have true or consistent quality work if it's not underpinned by that. So again, it's difficult to answer because that's the way I feel about it. But if I'm being honest, like everybody else, there's times too where you feel like, oh, this is a lot.
This is a lot. Yep.
It's a lot. But you have to be able to take that step back and say, okay, but this is the reason for it, right? And I think, the leaders in clubs, that's the message we need to send out to the key people we have in club. And when I say key people, I mean obviously the full-time staff, but there's so many part-time contractual coaches, staff, volunteers that play a role in that, and they need to understand that we're all chipping away at this thing, right? So it's not only for today, but it's for tomorrow.
One last question
Go.
about this. Do you think that we're going to get to a point where there's going to be too many national credited programs?
I think it's a risk. I think it's possible. And it kind of, I guess what I would add to that is it depends on what timeline, right? Because we just said it, like we're talking about establishing foundation. So if tomorrow we were to wake up, right? Or not tomorrow, let's say in 2 weeks' time, we were to
Yeah.
wake up and we'd be 30, 40, 50 national clubs, that sounds like it might be a lot.
Yeah.
Today, right? 100 years from now, I don't know, right?
No.
But today, so I think there could be that risk, and I'm sure that the people making those decisions are kind of evaluating that as well. Even though the message that's being said is that if you have the level, you get the license, which is fair, right?
Yeah.
Like anything else, right? So it's just about, I guess, being firm with the standards, right? Because that's important. Because if the standards aren't firm and if the standards are not maintained, well, then it's not really a standard, and you can't really compare or base it, and it's not really setting out or achieving what it's set out to do. So yeah, it's a risk.
It is a risk. It's something, again, it's combined with my other question, where I think, we're focusing so much on this licensing program. It's such an important, I hear it. I went to a board meeting, with my club, and that's all I heard. I heard licensing, 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 licensing. Guys, but we're missing the point. Why we're not hearing development, development, development? Like we're not, and this I'm speaking for my club. You
Yes.
understand? And what I heard, that's the messaging that I heard. because people are afraid that if they don't get this license, they will lose players.
So I think that when you hear licensing, people, what they're really also saying is they want to be better. We want to do better for the community, right? That's what they're saying. It's just that it's like you said, there's a bit that fear. It's like,
Yes.
I don't want to do poorly. I
Yes.
don't want to lose a license, not get a license. But the example I'll give is we kind of started there. We're talking about coaching education, right? There's a coach, and they're invested, they're passionate, they're going through the process, and they get to the point where they decide to go for their evaluation, and it doesn't go so well, right? And in that moment, in that snapshot in time, they are not meeting the standard. And I've seen coaches like that
Yeah.
in my club. I've seen coaches like that when I was part of other clubs, and I've seen coaches like that just part of the community because, again, I've been involved in it. And 9 out of 10 times, those people don't pack up and quit. Those people continue. They double their efforts. They do more, right? And eventually they get over the line, or they achieve what they set out to achieve. It's just not on the timeline that they initially would have wanted. And I think that that's also true of licensing, right? So you want an outcome, and today we always want it when now, right? But there's some things that you can't snap your fingers and achieve. It's not possible, right? So you're going to need to give yourself a reasonable, realistic amount of time to get there, and put the things in place, right? So that you can gradually make that
Also,
get the rank.
managing your expectations would be
Yeah,
something that I would
yeah,
recommend.
great way of saying it. Yeah. So that's the example I give.
A very, very good example there, Dave. David, another question for you. Again, let's get away from this licensing stuff. Let's focus on again, back to grassroots soccer. In your role, if I'm not mistaken, you take charge of U13 and older, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So at this level, U13 and older, we have this and we spoke about it. Some have, the abundance of licensed coaches like you have at your club. Some don't, and they're with volunteer coaches. You know, what are your thoughts on, the volunteer coach and, them following their child up from U4 till U13, and should they continue past that?
Okay. Yeah. Good. So look, I know that different clubs will do different things. So I can only speak for what I've done and what I feel, what I've set up in the club with my staff and what we feel comfortable with. Um, so to talk about 13 plus, I'm going to talk very quickly about U40, U12. You have to have parent coaches involved,
Yes.
right? Like, these people are so important for clubs. Volunteer coaches, like, no club can do anything without having that resource, right? So, and it's such an important resource, and there's less and less people who are volunteering their time. So those that are, or that are even getting paid, a little bit, because of now CDC, but it's still a huge commitment of time. They're just so important to the process. So these people are involved in those CDC ages, right? So like you said, they go through it 4, 9, 11, 12, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden you come to this point where there's this not division, but there's this change, right? Because grassroots finishes at 12, so now you end up in 13 plus, right? So you have this pool of coaches, some parents, some not, okay? And now you have these 13 plus teams that need to be coached. So depending the level of club, national, provincial, regional, etc., you're playing in different competitions, right? In our case, we have teams that play in every tier of competition. Okay, so what we've done, the way we've set it up, is that if you're in a provincial tier of competition, so LDP, PLSJQ, okay, the head coach is not a parent of a player on the team. Okay, but, and I can think of so many situations in the club, the assistant coach may be. So the reason we do that is because, well, these people have been working in the club. We've been sending them to license courses. They invest their time. They've been following the group. They have something to offer, right? And we want to make sure that we give the kids the most we have, right? So they can stay involved in the group. It's just that when you're at that LDP, PLSJQ level, people expect a little bit more. So I'm not saying that a parent who is a coach is in theory not able to deliver that, because I've had some parents who wanted to coach so much that they said, well, I'm now at U13. I'm not going to follow my kid anymore, but I want a team. No problem. This person is a parent of a child in the club, but the team they coach, their child isn't there. Not a problem as long as you have the prerequisite license,
Yeah.
right? That for me is not an issue. It's just that I think it just creates a better situation. What I found is there's a little bit more impartiality, right? There's the coach is detached a little bit more than should it be a parent who has a kid. And it avoids little conflicts that could arise. I'm not saying that they would arise, but it's like I don't even want to put the group or the coaches in that situation. So that's the road we've gone down, right? So we have qualified, certified parent coaches who have a child on the team and they act as assistants. And thank God for them. They do a great job and they contribute to what we're doing, but they're not the head coach of the team.
Yeah. No, I asked this question as someone who, if I put myself in those parents' shoes and I do a fantastic job from U4 to U12 with a crop of, with an age group, I would think that it would be, something that the club should look at, especially specific situations where, the parent, it's gonna happen. It happens in professional sports where we're taking it away at grassroots level because we think we're afraid that something might happen. What I put myself in is a little bit of a shot to the gut if I do that from U4 to U13 and then magically someone takes over my team and they continue on with the project that I started, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes these parents, and again, speaking as a volunteer coach parent, they want to finish the project. They want to finish what they started. Again, every club has their own
Yeah.
thing. I give you the other side of the coin, the parent side of the coin, because that's a lot of invested time. That's a lot of invested ideas, a lot of invested, just blood, sweat, and tears. You
Yeah.
understand? You win with girls or boys. You lose with girls or boys. It's a bond that's forged throughout U4 till U13. That bond is broken at a
Yeah.
certain point.
So I'm going to say two things. The first thing is that's what we're currently doing. And like I said, there's staffing issues in every organization.
Yeah, that's obviously.
You understand, and like
Yeah,
I said, volunteers are harder to come by, and
yeah.
coaches are harder to come by, regardless of what people think. So could it be that we need to adapt because of for staffing reasons? Well, when we're confronted with that, well, obviously we'll need to take a step back and look at it and assess it in the best way possible. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and trust me, I hear you because I'm I'm of that generation where you know a coach, a parent coach, would have started with a group at U8, and these people would have went all the way to U16.
Yeah.
And you hear some great stories about the time they invested, the highs and lows along the way, the story.
Obviously,
But
yeah.
it as I say that, I'm sure you're thinking of at least 3, 4 people that have done this, right? I've
Yes.
stayed 8, 9, 10 years with a group of players, maybe not identical, but more or less that core is the same. And the only thing I can say from a technical or pedagogical perspective is that, look, our kids go to school, right? They change teachers every year. And there's a reason for that. The reason is, the approach, it's interacting with different people. And even with the coaching setup, right? I like to keep coaches ideally when possible, and I try to stick by it, as much as possible. 2 years, maybe 3 years at a time at most. And then they need something different. And they need something different sometimes for multiple reasons. Not because they've done a bad job or the kids, it's sometimes the kids need a different voice. You've been there too long, especially when you're demanding and you're trying to have them really progress. the same voice is telling you something for 8 years, it's going to fall on deaf ears,
Yeah.
right? So there's that aspect that needs to be addressed, right? And then the other thing, and this is where, I've noticed it in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, and coaches are becoming a lot more comfortable with this kind of a discussion is, hey, David, like I'm not comfortable doing U16. Like I'm good when it's 13, 14, maybe 15. Some guys the reverse. I interact so much better with female groups, but not male groups. So all of a sudden you have these coaches again who are progressing all the time, investing their time, but starting to specialize, and that's interesting too, because now wow, this person, when I put them with a group with, let's say, set parameters, they're girls 13, 14, blah blah blah, I can achieve they can get this sort of an outcome at the end of 2 years, and that helps, so that's another part of it.
You're almost getting a projection at that point
Yeah,
of
so
what you're gonna get with a certain. No, that's very very interesting and a good angle that I never really thought of. You know, I'm gonna call it the way it is. The new hip words are LDP and LDIR. I'm gonna call it AAA, double AA, because that's what it is in theory. Now, I want to pick your brain,
yeah,
and you have these tiers, and again, we talk about, talk to us about AS Laval, you know, how do you go through evaluating these kids to place them in these different tiers? Because as it's a tough conversation with a coach when you need to tell him, this year's your last year.
yeah,
How do you have these conversations with these kids now? Because they're still kids at this age, at 13, that you're going to be in this bucket, this bucket, this bucket.
yeah. So I think the first thing is to realize that you could always be doing something better, right? So you're always look, how can we better approach this? But I'm a big believer in, you need to be ready, open, and willing to have difficult discussions. Because if you're shying away from this difficult discussions, you're going to make wrong decisions, right? So it doesn't mean it needs to be overly direct, but it needs to be clear. People appreciate clarity, right? So um, when you're at that point that you're having that discussion with that player, or more often than not, the parent is involved, right? It's important to be clear and not say things that can be misconstrued, or like people are like, oh, but how could he be telling me I'm great, I'm this, I'm that, but I'm not on the team? Like,
Yeah.
you need to be honest, like this needs to improve, and I think you should work on this. And so I encourage the coaches to have those kinds of discussions, always in a polite, respectful way, but
Yes.
you need to be clear,
Yes.
right? They
Direct.
can't come out of
Transparent.
there and think like, I don't get this guy,
No.
right? That's number one. The other thing I think that as we go, everybody in the clubs will become more used to it, is they need to understand that the evaluation process is not done 2 weeks in the fall. People think it boils down to 2 weeks in the fall, but that's just kind of buttoning it up, right? You're tracking players through the year, right? You have coaches who your department leads are speaking to regularly throughout the year. Certain people are watching certain games, right? You're training the kids. Now even in some instances, right, we have a lot of the games that are videoed, right, filmed at the higher levels. You can come back on that. You can cut the film, show the kid, right? So it's another tool you have in your arsenal to kind of bring that clarity. But yeah, there's a lot of discussion behind the scenes, phone calls. Because again, I can't stress enough, the coaches that are working at these levels, again, they're not full time, but man, do they invest?
Yeah.
Like, they pick up the phone sometimes during the day. You're wondering how and they're taking 15 minutes of their time to speak to maybe a staff member, to be like, this player, just want to keep you informed. And that's something that people don't see.
No.
And because they don't see it, they think it doesn't happen or it doesn't exist. But it's really prevalent. It's there, right? So those 2 weeks at the end of a season, that it's like, okay, let's bring everybody in and have that formal process. That's just to show that we've come full circle, and now there's that transparency at the end of it. But during the year, there's so much of it going on, right?
Yeah,
So I think that the
and I agree
evaluation
with that
process is
process.
continual.
Yeah, I agree with that process where it has to be, you know, again, speaking just of personal experience, there's technicians, there's coaches like myself. I think they both need to be involved at 100%, not the technician, not the, and I know in the CDC law and everything, the law that comes with whatever license you're going to get, the evaluation and mark needs to come from the club. I get that. The volunteer parent, I don't even want to give that mark, but can I give you my input at least?
Yes, the
That's
input.
all
Yeah,
I'm asking
I know.
for, is to have an input with these technicians, because the technicians will not be at all the games. I'm going to be at all the games. I'm going to tell you. And I'll give you an example. And I'll say it in front of everybody. And he's going to see it in 20 years from now, maybe laugh or maybe hate me for it. I'll give you my son as an example. He's a U9 player. His head is harder than the wall behind you.
Okay.
And when he's in practice, he's not a practice kid. It just doesn't work for him in practice. But if you put him on a field with a jersey and a number behind his back, he becomes a completely different player. Completely different. Aggressive, surprisingly smart. Didn't take from me, that's for sure. But you see, like, these are things that, again, yes, I would never evaluate my own kid. That I would refuse. I would step back and I would make
Yeah, of
someone
course.
else do it. But these are the examples that I see not only with my son, I see it with other kids too. They're different at different times. You cannot have an evaluation just on a practice or just on a, like you said, bring everybody in, herd everybody in, and do the formal thing. The formal thing will not give you an accurate reading on every kid.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing, I have to mention this is, and I have this discussion a lot with coaches and also with parents because it's a good point, right? Is the feedback, right? So again, when you look at a club and clubs, they're only getting bigger, right? Because again, the participation numbers are getting higher.
Yeah, through the roof.
Exactly, right? And it's a big mass of players to manage. And when you need to give formal feedback, what I mean by formal feedback is a written assessment, right? Or evaluation. You can only do that in a few moments of the year. And
Yeah,
up to every club to decide what makes sense for them in terms of their staff versus the size of their player pool and what's feasible. Like, is it two? Is it three? Is it four? But I'll tell you something, it's not 10.
no.
Because 10 is probably too often, it's too much work, right? And you're not giving the player enough time to actually
Improve.
improve, like see change,
Yeah,
right? So, but what I stress with players is that you're continuously getting feedback. It's just that it's informal. And
yeah,
we forget about that because your coach, he's there telling you, right? Um, Look over your shoulder. Don't just turn, right? Check your blind spot. Control with the inside of your foot. Whatever coaching point he's
whatever.
sharing with the
Yeah,
player. It's constant. I mean, we hear it. I mean, if you're at a practice, you're on the sideline having a coffee, like you'll hear these coaches saying these points over and over. And it's how do you turn that informal feedback, which is still something, it's concrete, like it's something that can help you. And the players, as they grow older and mature, need to understand, like, I'm not always going to have a sit down, me and the coach,
yeah,
where they're going to tell me, David, A, B, C. That'll happen a few times a year. But my coach is telling me stuff continuously. He's putting his arm around my shoulder and he told me that today I did this really well. Okay, maybe I should continue doing it.
yeah.
This not so well because of A, B, and C. What do I think about it? How should I approach it next time? This is something that players, right, need to be taught how to interpret, how to take in, how to use. Because I sometimes it's understandable that they don't see it as, well, it's not formal feedback, but it is helping you progress. And you're getting a lot more informal feedback than you're getting formal written feedback.
Yes.
So it's I think it's an important part. And when I have the discussion with coaches, players, and even parents, it
Yeah.
kind of everybody sees the logic right away. They maybe didn't think of it right away, but once you have the discussion, it's like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We're on it now. Now we're tuned in,
Yeah.
and now you can have change.
Yeah. And that's again another important thing. We always say manage the expectations, manage it. It's one of the most important things is managing the expectations of the parents too, because they're in reality, especially especially at local grassroots, they are in fact the customer. They're putting their kid in this program that they've entrusted. Do you find that at the national level you're needing to manage the expectations of certain parents a bit more than in the past?
Um, yeah, I guess I would say it would depend what. I think what the expectation that you have to manage is that you're, let's say in our case, right? You use this as we're a national club, right? We're at the base, you have to be process oriented, right? So yeah, a kid might win, lose, a team might win, lose. You hope to always do more winning than losing. That's everybody. But what underpins it is the process, right? So sometimes what I find can get blurred until they're educated and when I say educate towards the process, because again, these are smart people. You just
Yeah.
need to explain to them what you're doing,
Nah, not
right?
everybody, but you were generalizing, but we get the thing. They need to be educated.
Right.
Let's say it
So,
the
but
way it is.
when you tell them that these are the objectives we have for this group at 910, and you don't need to give them the full technical plan, but
No.
you need to give them an idea.
Yes.
Now this, okay, I understand why the emphasis is not there, right? And then the truth is this: you have three groups of people. The people that once you show them that they buy in wholeheartedly,
Yeah.
you'll never have problems with these people ever again, right? You have the people that it's your responsibility. They're in the middle, right? It's your responsibility to sway them, to
Yeah.
explain it to them, to make them understand the logic that underpins it. And then you have the people that, regardless what you tell them,
They will challenge.
regardless who you are or who you would bring in to tell them, they don't think it's true. They don't think you're doing a good job. And I just feel that you can't burn too much time focusing just on those people
No.
because they probably represent a very small percentage.
Yes.
The majority are in the other two groups.
Yes.
And not saying you have to disregard them, but at a certain point, if you see, like you said, it's just the message isn't passing, focus on what you can control.
You brought up a really good thing that I'm very interested in. You said, a technical plan for that specific age group. Uh, is this something that AS Laval has always done? Where for each group, I'm gonna say, okay, let's say U9. We
Yeah.
have three groups of U9,
Yeah.
R1, R2, R3. There's the same technical plan for these same three groups, no matter the talent level.
So you start with a general plan. So basically, you're imagining that more or less these are 9-year-old kids with general characteristics, right? So, and you establish a plan. And then you have to realize that you need that plan because you need to be open to changing the plan, but you can't you need a plan that is the foundation. Because if you don't have that foundation, then you're just going with the flow.
Yeah.
That's not a process, right?
No.
So you need to say we should be, I don't know, at this point right now, and we're not. You look around the room with this stuff. You say why. There's a reason as to why. So then you say, okay, we need to adjust. Okay, what are we gonna do? We're gonna do this. Everybody understands we're doing this to hopefully, jump back on the curve we should be on, right? How long will it take? I don't know. They're kids. They develop at different rates. It's not linear, right?
Yeah.
So you're going through that process, but you need something to anchor yourself in, right? Because if not, it's very easy, whether you're an experienced coach or not, to get very emotional about a process. You come out of one activity being like, oh, they can't do this, we should do X, Y, and Z, and you just kind of lose yourself, right? You're in the weeds.
Yeah.
So you need to focus and say, okay, this is the plan, right? If we need to deviate for these reasons, hoping to come back here. But yeah, every age group has a plan, a technical program, has objectives. There are model sessions, okay? Does that mean that depending on the competency group, everybody can do the same thing? Maybe not exactly in the same way. Let me be clear. Maybe I'm just throwing out numbers now. Okay, so let's say at U10, the first group, the highest competency group, they can do an activity over the distance of 12 meters, right? But maybe the second group, 12 meters, you're a little bit too far. The quality starts to wane. So you do it over 10. They're doing the same type of activity, right? But maybe you're adjusting the space, the dimension. Maybe you're adjusting the amount of players involved in an activity, right? Numerical advantage, whatever it is, right? Those types of parameters. So generally, yeah, they're doing the same thing, but it could be that if you were to look, you know how it is, they're on an 11-a-side field, you look from one quadrant to the other, you'd be like, that square looks a little bit bigger. There might be a reason for it.
Yes.
It's not that the coach made a mistake. There's a reason for it. And it doesn't mean that the kid who needs a little bit more space, all is lost for them. It's a picture in time. Today they need more space. Tomorrow
Yeah,
I don't know.
you don't know.
But to help them get there, today needed a little bit more space. That's it.
Amazing. David, we're already at an hour, and I'm pretty sure we could go another hour, but I know you're very busy. So I want to touch just a couple of more questions and then a little short, funny segment. And
Nice.
then I'll let you get back to, I don't know what you do at night there in Laval. You guys take a bath, or I don't know what happens in Laval, but
uh,
your crazy things that you do at AS Laval. Uh, the next thing, a hot button topic is these joueurs mutés, these players that are coming from other clubs. And I ask you this question because I gave you a little precursor before. Everybody has a bit of fear regarding
yeah.
this licensing program, and the fear comes from losing these players who will become joueurs mutés. What are your thoughts on it? Your players leaving clubs, coming to other clubs. Is this something that it should be encouraged? Not encouraged. What are your thoughts?
Not an easy question. Huh?
No.
So, look, I think that um, I'll look at it from this is the perspective I look at it from. Ideally, right, makes a lot of sense that a kid should play in the club in their community, right? Especially when they're younger, they're closer, the distance. I mean, we understand all that goes behind it, the parents driving around, right? So that makes a lot of sense. Um, but there's a responsibility that the club has to offer a certain level of programming. And I think that's where the licensing comes in, right? Because it can't be because a kid is born in, I don't know, a certain neck of the woods that they can't have access to quality training because perhaps today, snapshot in time, the club is not at that point yet. They might be there tomorrow, but they're not there today,
Yeah.
right? The window of opportunity for development for a player is much smaller than the window of opportunity of development of a club. Club will be around for the next 100 years. A playing career is a lot shorter, especially when we talk about really progressing and we want our kids to be the best version of themselves, right? So that window of opportunity is a lot smaller, and that's what I tell people. But I think you said something that to me makes it kind of always underpins my logic is that the parent is a paying customer. They're part of a club. They have a sense of belonging. If you're doing a good job, they're buying in. They're a paying customer, right? And I mean, I'll tell you, my colleagues, and I mean colleagues in other clubs as well, no one is unaware of the financial burden of, playing soccer, right? To do it well, it costs money,
Yes.
okay? And the parent is working hard, right? Raising their family, wants to give their kids the best opportunity, whatever. If they decide that they want to go spend their money and invest in their kid in another club, I think that they should be allowed, regardless if that's in my club or another club, because the reality is this is the case everywhere. And this is the frustration I get from the frustration. This is the emotion, or this is the sentiment I get when parents sometimes will explain that to me. They'll be like, I'm coming from somewhere else for this reason, and that's often the reason, right? And it doesn't mean that that club is doing a bad job. It's just it could be an expectation. It could be there's a bunch of reasons, but a lot of times that's the way the parents perceive it, right? I should be allowed to buy a service where I choose, right? Similarly to you go do groceries, you can decide to go to one grocery store or the other, right? You can decide to go to the corner store that's 500 meters away or the one that's 3 kilometers away. Put
Yeah.
gas wherever you want. Same concept, right? So I believe that, and the reason I believe it is not because some people say, well, they think that as a national club, I'm going to draw more players. That's not the reason. I believe that because I think it keeps us on our toes.
Yeah.
I think that's important because it makes sure that as clubs, right, as coaches, we're always trying to do better than we did before.
Yeah.
We're not sitting on our laurels. We're trying to improve, and it keeps us honest. That's the way I
But
see it.
yeah, I agree. The thing is that the other clubs that are not nationally licensed are scared.
Yeah, no, I know.
Every single one of them is scared. It's scared because the aura of going to play. And again, it's managing the parents' expectations. Doesn't mean that you're going to take your kid from RDP and take him to Laval,
No.
that he's going to make the team that he wants to play for. That doesn't happen, right? So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, again, before it was, you played competition, you tried out for competition, you made competition. Now it's you pay and you play.
Well, it's not really there. It was the same logic before. They're not playing on the team because they're paying to be on the team.
But they're in the competition realm. That didn't exist before. Before it was house league. When I played, it was house league and it was competition. I made, surprisingly, looking at my physical structure, I made the competition team. My father didn't pay and I was already in competition, right?
Yeah,
So that aspect has changed now.
yeah.
And this is where we have to be careful, because this is where people are leaving clubs and going to other clubs because they're not educated on exactly what happens when they make this move. It's not always for the best reason. That's why
Well, what I tell, look, what what I say, and I make sure that this is the message that again staff says, and I know speaking to colleagues, other clubs in the province, I mean, this is more or less the message that's being given, right? Is like anything else, ask the right questions, right? You're in one club, you're looking across the river, and you think, everything's rosy there. Maybe, maybe not. Ask the right question. Why are you unhappy where you are? There's a reason. First of all, before looking elsewhere, address it with your current club, right? There's a process there. Speak to them. I want to ask questions about A, B, and C. The answers might surprise you, right? So there's that has to start. And then if you're looking to go elsewhere, and again, it usually happens at the older ages. If you're looking to go elsewhere, ask the right questions, right? Make sure that you're looking at it from all perspectives. Does it make sense, not just for soccer, but does it make sense with family life? Does it make sense with school life,
school. Yeah.
academic life, right? Like all of a sudden, are you going to be driving across two bridges 3 times, 4 times a week? Does it make sense? Some people say, yeah, absolutely. Some people, that's where they take a step back and realize, you know what, there's probably a better solution for my kid, my family, like our situation, right? So I just think it's important that people aren't afraid, and I say people, in this case, parents, right, that are trying to guide their kids and help them along the way, to ask those questions, right? Because you would ask those questions if it was for school, you would ask those questions if you were going to the doctor, right? You ask
Yeah.
questions to kind of inform yourself on the expectation, the process, how will things be, and I think that has actually become
Yes.
a lot better in the last few years. And I know some people, it's not perfect. Nothing's ever perfect, but I can tell you in the last few years, it's leaps and bounds better. And I think that's a credit to everyone,
Yeah.
so it's just about staying on track.
Amazing, Dave. David, World Cup.
Yes, sir.
Canada, they got bounced out. I want to know your thoughts on Canada's performance. I have my own. Let's see if we jive on that. And what effect do you think it's going to have on grassroots soccer?
Yeah. Look, I mean, depending the age of kid we're talking to, they've now seen Canada play at a men's World Cup. The women hosted a World Cup in 2015, right? So girls and boys have had access to these awesome experiences. Now the men hadn't been in a World Cup since '86.
Yeah.
I can tell you that boys or girls have been watching the games because coaches have been talking to the players about games, right? This is happening across the country, right? Did you see the game? And they have. I watched it, we recorded it, we watched it, we saw highlights at Davies, this, that, like they're in tune. And that's awesome because I think that we both culturally understand that we probably grew up, right? And we were going for Italy, watching Italy at a World
Yes.
Cup. And look, I would tell you that 15 years ago, I mean, I was still watching Canada because, I grew up in the system. You
Yes.
watch Canada. Then as I got involved in coaching, it was almost like it's a professional obligation. Like you need to watch Canada. How can you not watch Canada?
Yeah.
But the last 3-4 years, and I can say without a doubt during the qualifying cycle, right? The Octagon, the last year, like I've been watching them, like I don't miss a game. Like when I was a kid watching Italy,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's awesome because it's not just me. There's people that's what I've understood is they're watching it in that same way. And I think that's really cool. And that's definitely going to have an impact on grassroots soccer and on soccer across the country. So I think from that perspective, this men's team at the World Cup, yeah, they didn't get a result, right? But they scored a goal. They got there in emphatic fashion, right? They did the program proud because you haven't been there in 36 years. I see a ton of positives, right? And then if we look at the performances, Belgium, I don't think anybody expected that, right? And it was a really good performance, right? The Belgians adjusted a bit in the second half, but overall it was really good. Croatia, I mean, I'll come back. Croatia, there was a lot of talks about why we didn't play with three midfielders.
Yeah.
And now today, it was a little bit disappointing because there was a little bit of a blunder, the keeper, in the first goal. But the other part I wanted to mention is as much as everybody's buying in, which is great because you have people watching, you have people talking about it, you have people on social media, right? You actually have people now being a little bit more critical about it.
Yes.
And I think that's interesting because I think before the MO was you watch Canada and it's either you're 100% with them or you're against everything. And that's not true because if you look at other soccer, football countries, right? They love their team, they love their players, but if something happens, they'll talk about it till they're blue in the face on a podcast from 7 in the morning to 7 at night, right? And we're starting to see a little bit of that. I saw it with the Croatia game, right, on social media. Why didn't play three midfielders? We're playing against these Croatian midfielders. They're all world-class players. I would have done this, maybe this, and I did. And I thought that was cool because it shows their level of investment in the team's success, right? People say they're playing, armchair quarterback, but they're invested. And I think that overall,
it's a Monday morning quarterback, armchair quarterback, but guys like yourself that watch the game, and and that's what frustrates me a lot about this, and I know there was this whole clip about a reporter, dissing on Davies and another reporter. I'm not going to name the names, but big hoopla. There's a very simple thing to do this. Hockey writers write and comment on hockey. Soccer people write and comment on soccer. And that's how you'll get more respect. So for me, I love the fact that Canada made it to the World Cup after since 1986. I love the fact that we were put in a group that was, when I first saw it, I thought the group was difficult, and my initial reaction was we're not making out of this group, and I was okay with that. What frustrated me was that we decided as Canada that we were going to be able to say, you know what, I think we can be a dark horse. We don't have that pedigree. We don't have that. We're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to talk about Croatia. We're not allowed to talk even about Belgium, which, you know what? I don't even like Belgium. They only have chocolates that are good. And we're not even allowed to talk about Morocco. We had the least amount of pedigree in that group. And we were going through this and, saying we could beat Croatia. They have an old midfielder. They have an aging midfield. We could beat Belgium. And you know what? When they played Belgium, David, I was with friends.
Yeah.
I was with Vinny Gattuso too. Very critical on Canada. And I saw the performance against Belgium and I said, wow, these guys are going to make me eat my words. But I felt that performance against Belgium, it digressed throughout the tournament. Against Croatia, we saw Davies score, and then we saw us being a little bit naive to the fact of who we were playing against. And again, it's our pedigree, it's our Canadian vanilla that Grinta was missing. We were missing that, hey, this is not over. These guys are fine-toothed. These guys they're cougars.
There's a term that the national team will use, or John Herman, you'll hear him use, is tournament expertise, right? And we're at a much different level in terms of tournament expertise. I mean, like you said, at World Cup level, this group doesn't have any. They're developing it now, right? So it's kind of like we're a step ahead. And I come back to at first, I mean, do you remember how far away we were from actually getting to this World Cup? I mean, we started so far back in the qualifying
Yeah.
because, right? So we're a cycle ahead in a sense, right? And now we get to go to 2026, not as our first experience. We're going to have players that have had legitimate World Cup games under
Yes.
the belt. So you come into 2026 at home again with a different possibility. I
And
mean,
a
I
different pressure. A different
absolutely,
pressure as well.
and no doubt, and I mean, no one's going to be. I doubt that we'd be on the top of the bookie list to win it, right? But you're coming in with a little bit more than we went into it this time, and the players that we do have that are playing in top tier, leagues right now. There are only two. There's Davies and David, right? Lille, David for Lille, and Alfonso Davies for
We
Bayern.
have Buchanan at Club
Yeah,
Bruges.
no, I mean top. I mean they're playing Champions League. They're in
Yeah.
top clubs, but we talk about when they'll talk about tier ones, those top
Yeah.
five countries, the leagues, right? But who knows? In the next 4 years, you might get a few more. So
Yeah.
you're coming into it set up in a different way. So again, I think we're definitely on the right track. I think there's a lot to be uh, optimistic about. You can be proud, but I agree with you. It needs to be a little bit measured. We still
Yeah, we
need to
need to measure.
understand where we
Exactly.
are in the grand scheme of
And
things.
sometimes it's hard on social media to get your point across, and that's why I try not to have these debate. I'd rather do it, talking with someone so they understand where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to be negative at all. I'm
Exactly.
just trying to make people understand that Canada's new to this game. We're new to this World Cup game. We haven't been here for years and being, qualifying outside our group or even winning games.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, we yeah, we could celebrate we scored a goal. But in theory, do we really want to celebrate that?
I think it's a milestone that
It's
along the
a
way. Let me ask you something.
milestone.
Do you think that they were hard done not to get a draw somewhere, and maybe in the Belgium game
Oh
or
yeah, yes, 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 yes.
you know,
The
s
Belgium game, David, the Belgium game was their best game. And because of one small mistake, we lost that game. Or else that game would have finished 0-0. And you know what? Davies misses a penalty shot. That's okay, guys. The soccer world and the people that don't write or talk about soccer is that it's okay that he misses. It's okay. I might not have liked the way he took the shot, but it's okay that he misses because it happens to everybody. Messi missed the penalty shot. You understand? And he's the best player in the universe. So that's what bothered me a bit about the way this transformed into. It was positive. I was really positive. The Belgium game was a super shock. Even after losing 1-0, I didn't feel like we lost 1-0. But the 4-1 against Croatia felt like not only did you get hammered into the ground, they hammered you and they put your tombstone on
yeah, yeah, it was a little bit.
it.
But again, it. I think the whole like from qualifying to now, like yeah, it ends on a little bit of a low. I mean,
Hello,
we didn't
yeah.
get a result, right? And
No.
and that would have been the next milestone after a
Yes.
goal is a result, a draw. You get a
Yeah.
World Cup point, right?
Yeah.
So now we're going to 2026, needing to kind of hit that milestone as
Yeah.
well, right? But it is what it is. I like the team. I know there was, again, we've been having discussion. This is what I find interesting is people actually want to have discussions about it,
Yes.
right? Is like what roster selection. I wonder why the staff, the coach selected this player,
Yeah.
right? Why not this player? Like again, and people are smart enough to know that there could be stuff that's going on in the camp that we don't have all the
Obviously.
details, right? So
Yeah.
you'll never exactly know. But just the fact that people are intrigued, they're invested, they want to speak about the team, and we saw this with, like I said, the Women's World Cup in 2015, right? That people want to speak about these players, our
Yeah.
Canadian players. I think that for me is the most positive sign because we're getting coverage. People think they're good stories to tell. They're good stories to cover. They're interesting people, and that's it. So I mean, for me, that's definitely a positive. I mean, aside from performances that I'm taking away from the World Cup
David, I
experience.
have so many other questions for you. We're gonna need to book you again because we have much more to talk about. We're gonna see with Mr. Cornelli if you're gonna come on before or after him. I'm joking. Mr. Cornelli will come before. Uh, Dave, before I let you go, I like to do this with everybody. I'll ask you some quick fire questions and you answer them, one word answer, a couple of word answers, just to have fun. People know that you do have a sense of humor and you're not like a killer or something on the side of being the direttore sportivo at AS Laval. Uh, so obviously you're a lover of the soccer, the soccer game, the football game. You know, you see me with my Milan, Milan Weekly podcast and the Milan stuff in the back. I know also that you're Italian, so I'm going to say you follow Serie A. Who's your favorite team in Serie A?
Roma, always been.
Roma. The Totti poster and the
I kind of give it away. Yeah.
top right,
That's all to
top left,
say.
give it away.
Yeah.
The team you hate the most in Serie A?
I guess it's got to be Lazio.
Wow, very nice. A manager that that you look to or you tried to emulate or pick his brain.
You might be surprised. Oh, you mean like in our community?
Either two-part question in our community,
Yeah.
and in the professional game.
Okay.
Is there anybody
So
that you
in the pro game, I mean, there's tons, but I would say Spalletti because when I was growing up, right, and it was his first time around. I was grew up in coaching, and it was his first time around at Roma, and he was doing interesting things with Totti in the false nine position. So definitely Spalletti, and his teams always play a good brand of football.
do you have a farm and talk to your animals as well, like Spalletti?
No, I
No?
don't. I don't. But I love that documentary that they did. I watched that too.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I mean, there's so many. I feel like if I mention someone locally, like I'd be forgetting somebody else. But I'll mention because I know he's been on the show, Andrea Di Pietrantonio. I mean, when we sit down, we have
Coach.
coffee. We always have good chats.
Coach. Yeah. Again, if you wouldn't be doing soccer, what would you be doing?
If I wouldn't be doing soccer, I'd probably be in business. Maybe I don't know, in the banking world or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's better you're in soccer. One last question, the most important, the rock star of all questions.
Go.
I'm gonna send everybody after you, huh? Because at AS Laval, I'll send you Vince Gattuso, I'll send you Frank Lapari, the Araish, the brothers, whoever I can send. Penne lisce or penne rigate?
Let me ask you something. In 21 episodes,
Yeah.
has anybody said penne lisce?
There is some that says
Yeah?
penne lisce.
Well, I'm not going to be the next guy. Penne rigate.
There you go. David, thank you very much. Guys, thank you to David, President in the background. David, just tell people where they can reach out to you if they're in the Laval region and they have absolutely no idea where your club is, where they can contact you, get information, and join the club.
Obviously, best way is always through the website, www.aslaval.com.
David, I want to thank you so much. We will have you on again. Stay
Pleasure.
for we call it the the local soccer show after dark when we close the camera. Guys, I want to thank you again for tuning in to the local soccer show. The people that join live, the people that will listen to it tomorrow. David is a fantastic wealth of knowledge in the sport and the local community. This is what we try to do at the local soccer show, guys. Bring you guys like David who give their expertise, their honest opinion. I'm just here for the good looks. Guys, thank you very much. I'll see you in 2 Thursdays if I still have my voice. Guys, take
Thank
it
you,
easy.
Stevie.
Ciao.